Oh my gosh, we are in a galaxy far, far away, but it still feels like home because we see old familiar faces like Lauren here. Welcome to the Rebel Scum Podcast Network. She's Lauren, I'm Andrew, and we are hijacking the airwaves. Brock, James, never heard of them. We're taking over now. I don't know how your Adobe skills are, Lauren, but if you can just erase Brock and James's names from all these logos and put ours, that would be fantastic.
I'll work on that. I will definitely work on that for us, Andrew.
Well, happy early American Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Thank you. Very much appreciated. We are very looking forward to our fun Thanksgiving festivities here in the States. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
And if I mean, as far as I know, you guys have the exact same customs Thanksgiving wise as we do. We just do it on different days, right? Is there anything you guys do that we're like that we don't, or vice versa?
I don't think so. I think we're pretty on par. I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's the turkey, it's the stuffing, mashed potatoes, the green bean casserole, all that
All the good
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we're pretty simpatico, us and our Canadian brethrens when it comes to Thanksgiving for sure. So yeah, I think it's just different days, randomly different days,
Yeah.
but same thing. Yeah.
You guys got a colder one. Ours is a crapshoot. Ours we've literally had blizzards on our Thanksgiving, and we have had like shorts weather. So
it's cold. It could vary, but yeah, we're pretty much the same when it comes to Thanksgiving. Snow maybe, but it's usually like, cooler weather for sure. Absolutely.
yeah, as long as there's pumpkin pie, that's what makes me happy.
There you go. There you go. Absolutely.
So today, Lauren, we're talking about something very near and dear to our hearts.
Yes.
We're talking about Jar Jar Binks. Well, that and other things.
Which is true. Right.
Yes.
Right.
We can see the photo of Rex behind you, but what people don't know is that there's on the walls surrounding you is nothing but Gungans.
Yes. It's you can't see, but it's like there. Yeah, I have a lot of Jar Jar Binks stuff. It's ridiculous. Absolutely. Absolutely.
You and James should just have like a MTV's Cribs where it's just Jar Jar stuff.
Right. See who has the most swag. I love that. Yes, absolutely.
But apart from Gungans, we're talking about animated characters who make the jump into live action. Unlike Jar Jar, who was an animated character in live action, he falls under a different category. Maybe that's a video for another day. But Lauren, what's it like to you as a Star Wars fan and as an animation fan? What's it like to see these characters come to life in flesh and blood?
It's surreal, right? Because I think as Star Wars fans, when it came to animation, I think early on, right? We're talking Clone Wars, even Rebels to a certain degree. It just felt like, these are animation characters, right? Could we see them in live action? Maybe, maybe not. But I don't think that was a thought, though. I think when they first when Clone Wars and then Rebels came out, I don't think we ever, at least me, I can't, and Andrew, obviously, speak for yourself for sure, but I just never thought it would come to where those characters would be a part of the live action, right? Would make that jump, because it just, I don't know, it was just nothing in my forethought. It's something I wanted, right? I think as fans, don't you agree? Like, yeah, dude, I want to see these characters in live action, right?
Oh, sure. It's definitely something that we would have welcomed with open arms. But I think I get what you mean. We come from a world where the entertainment industry looks at live action as an inferior species.
Yes.
They don't treat it with the same gravitas that they would a movie, which is wonky because half the time cartoons do it so much better. My buddy Ryan, who does the Infinity Rewatch podcast on our sister channel there, he puts it so eloquently when he talks about the Marvel cartoons and the DC cartoons, and then when those same stories get adapted to big budget blockbuster movies and they're somehow not as good. And he makes the point of saying, if the cartoon did it better 20 years ago, then you really have a problem on your hands.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. 100%. 100%. Yeah.
So the elitist idea out there of like cartoons are not as good, it's not as special anymore.
Mhm.
That idea really has to go out the window. But having said that, as cartoon fans,
Mhm.
when we see them make the jump, it always does feel like a big special moment, doesn't it? Like seeing Ahsoka for the first time in The Mandalorian, God, that felt like it was a benchmark moment.
It was though, right? I mean, well said, Andrew, because I think it is that moment of Ahsoka, especially her, right? Especially that character that every fan fell in love with, right? Some might have been with her from day one, some might have it took time, right? But I think as collectively, I think as a fan group, I would venture to say that everybody fell in love with that character, right? So to see her make that jump in Mando, especially Mando, right? Because it was new, right?
Yeah.
Mando was new, it was a new character, new thing. And to bring a connective tissue like Ahsoka, that's huge, right? But then again, you factor in the idea or that kind of old way of thinking that animation is for kids, right? It's for, it's not serious when it really is. Like you said, some of the animation is for me way better than some of the live action stuff. Not always, but there's a lot of things in the animation, Clone Wars Rebels, that is really top tier for me. So when you get that character like Ahsoka, or again, when these characters like these Rebel characters in Ahsoka series show up, it's a big moment. It is a benchmark because I think that shows how important those characters are, that medium is for a lot of Star Wars fans, that the Lucasfilm felt like, yeah, these characters can go into a show and it's going to have a big viewing, right? Or people are going to love it because of these characters, right? Not
Right.
because of Luke or Han or Leia or Jedi or Sith, because of these characters, because of Ahsoka, because of Ezra, because of Sabine, because of Hera, because of Chopper. People will watch the show, and that's a testament, right? I mean, that's a testament to how fans have, I think, interacted with animation and how it has grown. In my opinion, I don't know if that's how you feel too, Andrew, but I think it is one of those moments where the changing of the idea of animation not being serious or however you want to call it, right? I mean, that's just, I don't know, that's just how I feel about it for sure.
Yeah, a lot of creative people in Hollywood are definitely moving away from that notion because it is an outdated one. The people in power who don't know any better, I feel like they would still, like Bob Iger would still be like, "What's an Ahsoka?"
Yeah,
Because that's just they, they
fair.
they can't contemplate creativity. And I think a big part of it too, a big part of the divide between the two worlds, it
Mhm.
comes from subconsciously from us. Like if you put yourself in the shoes of 2006 us,
Mm,
right? We lived under the assumption that Star Wars was finished.
mm.
Not
Yeah,
in like a stupid Twitter Star Wars is dead
right,
kind of way, but in a yeah, it's over. They told the story. That's it. We're not getting any new Star Wars films.
right, right.
And then they blew our minds with that 2D Clone Wars cartoon. And we were like,
Mm,
wow, that was something. And then they blew
mhm.
our minds again by saying, okay, we know there's no more movies, but here's like a full Cartoon Network series that we're making. And for the first time since the 80s, we had a Star Wars cartoon, but this one was crafted with way more love than the Ewoks and Droids shows. And it really it adhered to a lot of the canon that we love that was present just
Mhm.
in the movies. So we kind of probably felt back then, at least I did, that that was sort of the consolation prize. Like, yeah, Star Wars is over, but hey, you got this neat show. And I didn't hop on it right away. I was really, really late to the party. It wasn't until I think season 4, because
Mhm.
part of that, most of that is for me. The blame is on me because that was the way cartoon shows, I should say, were treated back then. If
Yes.
if they came from a property, right? We thought like these people aren't going to care about canon. These people aren't going to care whatever. They're just making a cartoon. This is going to be like droids, whatever. Uh, I didn't think that there would be that much love put into it, and
Mhm.
then I started hearing like, yeah, they brought back Darth Maul, and it wasn't like cheap and stupid. Like they brought him back, and it's part of the story, and it's the Clone Wars are going on, and I'm like, I gotta see this to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And then next thing I knew, I'm 4 seasons deep, and I'm like, these people understand Star Wars.
Well, it's crazy too, because I think, to your point, Andrew, how animation is even marketed, right? Like back then, you would have just like you said. I think a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's just it's Ewoks, it's droids, it's cartoon, it's it is what it is. It's fun for kids." Au contraire, mon frere, because I don't think people realized back then how involved George Lucas was.
Yes.
In the entire Clone Wars project. So that should have been a big old like, hey guys, no, this is serious. We're taking this serious. George is involved. He is writing stories. He's in the room telling these stories and we are making them, right? Like that was what it was, but nobody knew that, right? Because of, again, like you're saying, the animation back then, it wasn't marketable maybe at the time, or it was only to a certain age, right? Whereas now, fast forward to 20 some, almost 20 years, it is marketable. You have people our age, younger, even older, watching animation because of the storytelling, right? Because of what Clone Wars did. You get stories of rebels, you get Bad Batch, you get Resistance, who again, maybe even to that's a little bit maybe more kid, for sure, but it still has some really deep themes. And I think that's one of the, I think, things that animation has hung its hat on in Star Wars is the storytelling. Any storytelling within that category has been really solid. Like, I mean, from Clone Wars to Bad Batch to Rebels to Resistance, it's just been really, really good. Even now, we're getting little stories of Tales of the Jedi, right?
Right.
In animation, not live action. Why? Because people are willing to accept that medium now. It's a game changer. And then, like you said, for those characters like Ahsoka to jump to live action, then for us fans, we're like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Now you have a whole, general population of Star Wars fans, the general audience, who are like, oh, who's this character? And now people like us can push our nerd glasses up and be like, let me tell you who they are. Let's watch it, or let me tell you what you need to watch. It's really, I think Star Wars for me has done a very good job of doing that transition from animation to live action, right? It seems so, like, again, to us fans, like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Like, this isn't like oh, why would they bring that character into live action? No, it works. It works in the stories they're telling, and I think that's a big part of it, for sure.
Right, because the stories they told in those cartoons were already so mature, and they were directed with the same love and TLC as they would a live action thing, that it didn't feel out of place. Was there a moment for you, Lauren, the first time you watched Clone Wars? Mm-hmm. Was there a moment where it clicked for you, where you realized, oh, this is not like the cartoons I'm used to?
Oh man, I don't know if there was, like, I can't think of like a very specific moment, but I just remember watching, right? And full disclosure, I'm very similar to you, Andrew. I was super late. Like, this was on Netflix, been on Netflix for like years, right? So I was super late to the party. But, when I really, like 2015-ish, Force Awakens coming out, I'm getting, Star Wars is back. I'm getting into it a little bit more, and then I keep hearing people talk about the show, Clone Wars. So I finally watch it, and I just, I don't know if there's a specific moment, but I just remember watching it and just being like blown away at the stories they were telling with the characters that we were familiar with, right? Anakin, Obi-Wan, Yoda, Master Windu, you had Jar Jar, you had Princess Amidala, like you had all those characters. And then you add in the clones, who at that time, again, when I watched it, but even I think at the time of the release, we only got Attack of the Clones and you just saw them, right? You weren't ingrained with the characters of like Rex or Cody or Fives or any of those groups. And now we have Bad Batch and everything like that. But I think it was just the storytelling of it blew me away, and I think just what they were doing to really, and I don't think they meant to do this intentionally, but to really bridge that gap between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, and to be like, this is what happened during the Clone Wars. Like, this is it, man. They were on missions. Obi and Anakin were in trouble a lot. Anakin has a Padawan named Ahsoka. Yoda's doing his thing. Like, it was really, again, you got to give credit to George and to Dave Filoni, who was a part of that too. And again, those two get the mentions, right? And as they should. George, obviously, all hail the maker. He's the one that started this whole thing, but you got to give it to Dave, and then the rest of the animators, the draw, everybody that was involved in Clone Wars, and then who is still involved in all the animation. That I think a lot of people that were back in the Clone Wars days are still a part of Bad Batch and in Rebels and everything like that.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the continuity is so good too, is because I think you have a lot of people who were involved back then still involved in it now. So it just makes total sense. So yeah, just the overall vibe of the show, I just remember being like, yeah, this is good. And it's not for, I mean, it is for kids, but as well, Andrew, some of those arcs, man, they're dark. They're
Oh, yeah.
dark, you know?
They get dark, they get very complicated, and some of the best moments on Clone Wars are moments that are hard to appreciate if you're a super little kid, right? Like it's hard to wrap your head around Mortis as an adult.
Right, yeah. Right.
I can't even imagine showing that to like one of my students and being like, what do you think?
Right.
Analyze.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Like,
for me, the moment that made me realize what kind of show I was dealing with here was it had to do with Grievous, because he's one of my favorites. And I had picked up the DVDs. They had the first 2 seasons for like super cheap somewhere. So I'm like, okay, let me watch this show on DVD. Let me see what it's like. So I picked up the DVDs, and there was an episode where it was one of the early ones, season 1, where Obi-Wan and Anakin and Padme, they all get stuck aboard Grievous's ship.
oh, okay.
I think Ahsoka was there too. I'm not sure, but the 3 of them were definitely on the ship, and they were trying to find each other and escape. And I'm sitting there with my how cartoons used to be mentality, and I'm thinking, these guys don't care about the lore. In Revenge of the Sith, when Anakin goes into Grievous's ship, that's the first time they meet, because Grievous says like, "Oh, I finally met you," whatever. And I'm like, these guys don't care. They're going to make Anakin fight Grievous because it's a cartoon, whatever. And then they never ended up meeting. And for the whole season, they never ended up meeting. And I'm like, do these people actually care? And then I saw a special feature on that DVD where Filoni says, like, I had to be very careful because I had this episode and I had to make sure Anakin and Grievous never end up in the same room. And I was like, all hail this cowboy.
Again, that attention to detail.
Yes.
Right? I think that's a big major part of why these characters from animation going to live action isn't that really, again, surprising to us, because again, the writing has been so good. How they have set up those stories within those shows, it all just connects. Like you're saying, like they're aware that Grievous and Anakin never meet until that like they knew how to maneuver all that, right? There's a lot of things that, like you're saying, that they could have just thrown caution to the wind and be like, well, who cares, right? But no, they cared. They cared a lot. And you can tell, again, in the storytelling and just how they showed these characters in that era too, during during Clone Wars or Rebels. Like, they really want it to be right. They want it to, again, like you're saying, follow the lore, right? They don't want to mess it up. They didn't want to mess it up. And they were right. And they did it so well. And I think that's why shows like the Ahsoka series work so well on so many levels, is because of the setup, because of the character themselves, because of what they have set up within these shows. That, yeah, maybe you could argue that, if you haven't watched Rebels or Clone Wars, yeah, maybe Ahsoka series was a little bit kind of hard to follow. But I mean, even if you didn't, you could still get like the general vibes, right, of what kind of transpired prior to. But I think what is satisfying for us fans that have watched all that, it pays off, right? The payoff when they go into live action, they do these shows, and the stories just continue as if they were, gone from animation right to live action. It's seamless. It really is. It's seamless almost. They do a really good job. They really do.
And because the cartoons are so well done, it's not like we're sitting here thinking, oh, these characters like Ahsoka are so good. Please put them in live action so that you can do something with them. Like we've already been doing great stuff with them, and this just feels like more of that. That's exactly what you said there. It's seamless. It doesn't feel jarring. It doesn't feel like one is higher quality than the other.
Right.
They both work in tandem, and like we have reached this beautiful sweet spot now where it's like the sacred canon, whatever the lore that we love as fans, is this live action movie, but it's also that live action show, and it's also that animated show, and they are all giving the same amount of love and dedication to the story.
And you're totally right, Andrew. Like, one is not better, or one's not more important than the other. Right? Like animation, yeah, it's good. It's deeper meaning. You can get maybe a better, like, just a deeper knowledge of these characters, but it's not more important than if you didn't watch any of that and you watched the Ahsoka show. You'd be totally fine, right? Because again, they set her up in live action in Mando, and how popular that show was. Again, you bring in a character like that brings people's attention, like, oh, this Jedi, who's that? And then you start, again, that's where nerds like us say, you got to watch this stuff. And then they just keep it going, right? It's like, hey, catch up. You don't have to, you don't have to not watch, but catch up when you can. Like that. I think that's the beauty of it, right? I think that's the beauty of it.
Now we're at a point where we've gotten a bunch of these characters making the jump into the live action world. So, Lauren, where I know it's probably hard to choose, but has there been a moment with a specific character making that jump that just felt the most right to you, where you just were like, this is my favorite transition, like this was the best handled, or just the one that gave you butterflies, like whatever?
Oh man, I mean, can I cheat and say there's two?
Absolutely.
I mean, really, there's three. Honestly, there's three. I'll say there's three for me. One
I'm not going to call foul on that.
No. Okay. Well, I appreciate that. No flags. Okay. So the first one, again, not in any order, but the first one is that Ahsoka appearance in Mando season 2. I mean, you talk about the setup, right? I mean, the tease, like the couple weeks prior to that, of Bo-Katan, again, Clone Wars to live action, chef's kiss, the name drop, right? And then the anticipation by us fans who know who that is. Like, oh my God, are we going to have to wait like the entire episode to see her? No, right there. Within 10 seconds, you're seeing those beautiful white sabers in the show. And you are just like, okay, I am in 100%. Rosario Dawson did a really good job portraying her, and obviously continues to do a good job for me personally. But that moment of just seeing those white sabers and then seeing those, lynch, like, it was just, I was like, I could not believe I was seeing a character that I loved in animation in the live action, and it looked good, right? Yeah. Again, you can argue the first, the tendrils and all that. Okay, I get it, people. We can, that's a discussion, but the look, the feel, the mannerisms, it was there, and it was rewarding, right? It was rewarding for us fans that have been loving that character so much, for her to make that jump and be the first one, right? One of the first. I mean, you could argue Chopper in Rogue One was kind of the first animation live action, technically, but you want to talk about big character, Ahsoka was it in Mando season 2, right?
Yeah.
Then you go, again, that happens, and then she shows up in what, Book of Boba Fett, right? And sees Luke. That just, again, that's a whole different ball of wax for me. That's a 3-hour podcast for me. So, but again, Ahsoka, that moment in season 2 Mando was beautiful. For me too, I got two, the other one is Sabine in Ahsoka series. That intro with her on that, like, land scooter or whatever, on the bike, the rock music. I mean, it was just, I was like, yes, like this would be what she would listen to. This would be her attitude. This would be how she would act. It was just so perfect. Natasha did such a good job with that character. It was one of the highlights for me in the series. She did such a phenomenal job. So her intro, that intro was just awesome, right? Going down that road that I have seen a million times because I love Rebels, and going down out of Lothal and heading to Ezra's house and everything. I was like I couldn't believe it. The whole thing. It was just beautiful. And then I will say for Ezra himself, who is one of my favorite Jedi, he's up there for me. I mean, I love that character. Again, it was maybe a not a big kind of like the Sabine or Ahsoka, but the way that she finds him, and he's just leaning up against the thing, and I'm just like, that's Ezra. That's Ezra.
Yeah.
That's how he would be acting. Very cool, very calm, very like not back offish, but just just very cool, calm, collective. Like, oh hey, finally you're here. Like, what took you so long? Like, that was such an Ezra like moment for me. And for us to see him, right, the last time we see that character, spoiler alerts for anybody that hasn't watched Rebels, but we see him and Thrawn and take off with some space whales, right? And we don't, for the longest time, we don't know what happens to him. And then you finally see him in that show, in that moment. It was, again, one of those heartstring moments for me because I love that character so much. So those are probably my three. I know I cheated, Andrew, forgive me, but
It's all good.
those are my three. Those are my three big ones, though, for sure.
Those are great. And I love how Ezra and Sabine's friendship has not missed a beat either. Right?
Yes. Iman, and I mean, yeah. I think is it Isman? I think is who the actor is, and Natasha.
Yes. Yeah.
So good as Sabine and Ezra together. Exactly, their friend. That just solidified how important it was for them to get it right, because they know how important these characters are in animation, and they know how big of a fans we are of those characters, that they wanted to get it right, and they did. Yeah. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
I think for me, the one that gave me the most goosebumps and the feeling of just, I can't believe we did this and we did it well, was Zeb.
Oh, good call. Oh, good call, man. Andrew,
Right?
I'm with you.
Just a cameo, just a little cameo, but we're humans. We know what a human looks like. So when we see one represented on camera, whether it's animated or not, we can recognize, hey, that's a human, and that's why robots scare us, because of the whole uncanny valley thing. With Zeb, obviously he's not human, so we kind of knew without even being told, because nobody told us he was coming. We knew that if the day ever came where we saw Zeb in live action, it would be some kind of CGI thing. But that was never at the forefront of her minds. So not only does he pop up and surprise us with his appearance, but first of all, they have Stephen Bloom voicing him again.
Yep.
So he's on par. Like it sounds like Zeb, and you expect a little bit of change. I mean, like, you look at the Grand Inquisitor, looked a little different in live action because he had to. Right? Nobody has a head that big, as far as I can tell. So you have to make those compromises, and we understand that. But then, lo and behold, here comes Zeb with Steve Bloom's voice and zero compromise to the way he looks. Like, I don't know how they did it, but I feel like every meeting they would have to have when it comes to adapting these characters, somebody has to be in the room to play devil's advocate and say, okay, guys, this is not going to work in live action, but this will. And for Zeb, it just feels like that guy was not in the room that day. Everything worked out. He is like 1-to-1 scale, and I'm still floored by the way he looked. So I feel like that to me was the one that kind of it eased my heart and soul because it made me think like if we can do Zeb that perfectly, anything's possible. Nothing's off the table anymore.
It was so good. It was. I mean, it was one of those surprises, right? That you didn't know. I had no clue. Did not even have that in my bingo card of him showing up in the show, right? But then you see that beautiful purple Lasat, you hear Steve Bloom's voice, and that was one of those moments though too, where I'm Leo DiCaprio in the GIF, like pointing, snapping.
Yes.
You're like, oh my god, they did it, and he looks so good, and that's the thing. It could have been just okay, right? And we probably would have accepted it. Like, hey, you know what? You get it. It's a purple, Wookiee that looks different. Like, yeah, it's gonna be hard to replicate in live action. No, dude, like you're saying, I think the room was like, we have to get this right, right? Like they were the ones that were, the Filonies and all of them were like, no, we have to get Zeb right. We have to. Like, there's no you can't sugarcoat it. He has that distinct look. So yeah, I don't know how they did it, but they did it. The CGI looked great, and I can't remember if some of it was mocap, a smidge. I thought I've heard, again. Maybe I could be completely wrong, but I thought there was a little bit of Steve Bloom mocap, but I could be totally wrong. But regardless, it, like you're saying, it looked good, and the blue fighter suit, and just, oh, it was so good. It was so good. It was so good.
It was
so good.
Crystal clear Zeb. Like it couldn't have been any better. And I'll also give an honorable mention here. You brought up Leonardo DiCaprio, and it's very fitting that you did. A lot of actors of Leo's ilk, they make their bread and butter on playing people who have existed in real life. That's actors, movie stars love that when it's like, hey, you have to play, Napoleon, and Joaquin Phoenix is like, yeah, right,
yeah.
So you get a lot of actors when they're playing somebody who is a bit more contemporary than Napoleon. They get sort of part of the prestige of that role is how well can they imitate a person. Meryl Streep is amazing at that. Meryl Streep is a flawless imitator. So whenever she has to play somebody who has existed in real life, like when she played Julia Child, it's like, wow.
Why she's one of the best. Why she's one of the best.
So I want to give honorable mention and like special props here to Natasha Bordizzo here, because for the way she tackled Sabine feels like the way a movie star would tackle one of those roles, because everybody did a good job. Rosario did a good job. Iman Esfandi did a great job, but Natasha in particular, I don't know, maybe it's because of like my background in acting training. Maybe I can pick up these things. I don't know how, but I can see everything she's doing. I can see the work she put into it. I can see the research. This woman watched Sabine cartoons to the point where like she had her body language down, particularly when she's sitting on Ahsoka's ship and she's trying to force the cup to move and it doesn't move. She does this little thing with her mouth where she's just like she's pissed off at the cup. And I'm like, Sabine does that in the cartoon. Like, how did you do that? So like if there's some kind of Oscars we can give out here, I'm giving it to Natasha Bordizzo.
I'm so with you. She really did. Again, I could talk about that performance for a long time, but yeah, they did the homework because they care, right? I think Isman did the homework on Ezra, like, because they know how important this character is, how important that character was to so many fans, and then even how important it is to Dave, because Dave created these characters. He's doing this Ahsoka show, again, a character that him and George created together, Ahsoka. So yeah, they did the homework. That you could tell they put in the work. You're 100% right, Andrew. They put in the work when they didn't have to, right? They could have just like, oh, okay, I'll watch maybe a couple episodes, or no, I'll do my own thing. No, they cared. They cared enough to, like you're saying, get the mannerisms, the little things right, and to just get that overall like sense of that character and really pull them straight from animation to live action. Like again, seamlessly. It is. She did a wonderful job. 100%. I agree with you. 100%.
There are a lot of actors out there, and this is unfortunate, but there are a lot who would have gotten cast in that role and
Mhm.
looked at it and just said, "Okay, show me a picture of Sabine. Okay, cool," and then they would have just gone from there. But this one took the time to understand why fans loved her. Like, why is this character being put in this show? Oh, because fans love her from this show. Well, I should see why. And unfortunately, so many actors are very hasty to write that off
Right.
because it's a cartoon.
Right.
So I'm glad she wasn't one of those.
Agreed.
As a Clone Wars fan now, Lauren, how did you feel? And I should have written her name down. I feel bad that I didn't because I can't remember it. But we got to see teenage Ahsoka. How did that
Adriana Greenblatt.
Ariana Greenblatt.
Ariana.
Thank you. Yeah, that's it. Ariana Greenblatt.
Who played young Gamora in Infinity War?
That's right. She's good at playing young aliens.
Very good.
How did that make you feel? That teen Ahsoka.
Ooh, man. Again, one of those, didn't have it on my bingo cards, but man, was I thrilled. It's just one of those moments where you almost, I don't want to say take it for granted, but it's just one of those moments where like, okay, that's young Ahsoka. Like no, we are in the Clone Wars. That's Anakin. Hayden is Anakin. Clone Wars Anakin. That's a clone trooper. There's Rex and like it was overload for nostalgia, which again, it's not, again, some people might think that is a naughty word, but nostalgia done well is very, very, it's good. It's good when it's done well. So when you see, Adriana, pull that look off, and to go from this couple different phases, right? Where you see early Ahsoka, like season 1, season 2, right? The outfit.
Yeah.
And then the jump, though, the one that got me was the jump to the Siege of Mandalore, because that is one of my favorite outfits, favorite looks of Ahsoka. And it looked amazing in live action, like I would hoped it would be, right? And for her to again have the inclination to again care, because I feel like she did a really good job in pulling what young Ahsoka was like, right? The back and forth between her and Hayden was so good, right? And then for her, again, just to embody who that character was at that time, or just to show who she was. Because again, it was kind of older Ahsoka, but going through like a quest type vision thing, however you want to call it. But she looked so good as that young Ahsoka. The outfits, everything, and just her mannerisms. It was very, again, she cared, right? She cared because Rosario Dawson cared, right? Because again, Dave Filoni cared. So, it's a again, you're saying, it's rare for an actor to really care about wanting to get it right. It's not like she was in it the entire, like, it was one episode and not even like a full episode. Like it was just her and like what, maybe a grand total of 10 minutes, maybe like
If
total,
that. Yeah.
if that. So for her to care and for her to again feel appreciation for that character and for what she did and to want to get it right again, now that the strike's over and everything, you see all this behind the scenes stuff that they're, all these actors are dropping. It's a beautiful thing to see her and Rosario and Hayden, like all together, Rosario and Ashley Eckstein together. It's great. But yeah, for her to, that moment when you see that young Ahsoka, because at first it was hard. You're like, okay, is that like, I know that's Ahsoka, but is that Rosario? I can't tell. And then, the slow pan forward, and then it's young Ahsoka. And I was just like, wow, we're going there. We're going there. And it was, and then that first sight of the clone, a clone trooper running by, and then you see that blue lightsaber, and it's Hayden, though. That, again, that one really threw me too, is when you see Hayden dressed in the armor in Clone Wars. Like that just, oh God, that blew my mind. But yeah, sticking with Adriana as young Ahsoka, it was perfect. It was perfect. And Didn't know I need it. It's one of those moments for me, Andrew. I don't know about you.
Mhm.
Didn't know I needed it. Glad I got it.
Oh
Glad
yeah,
I got
yeah. I'm the same boat. I didn't know that was missing from my life. There was a little teenage Ahsoka shaped hole in my
it.
heart
Right,
that has
right.
now been filled.
Yep.
And that scene for me, that transcended so much of the whole live action or animation to live action thing, because
Mhm.
it assaulted my senses in multiple ways. Because there I am, and I'm looking at the screen, and we've been looking at Rosario this whole time,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden this other Ahsoka comes on, and she's a million times closer to what we know of as Ahsoka Tano, because we just
Right,
spent so much more time with that version of Ahsoka.
right.
But then something else happens on top of it where I love Rosario, she's fantastic, but she doesn't sound like Ashley Eckstein. And then the second Ariana Greenblatt opens her mouth, she sounds like Teen Ahsoka. Hey, Master, what? I do not sound like her, but like the
Right,
voice that comes out of that kid
right.
sounds like Ahsoka's voice. And
Mhm.
I'm just like, oh my God, we're here. We're back in the Clone Wars.
Right.
And then to top it all off, they did something so interesting that I feel like now this opens even more possibilities in the future. And I want to see if this happens. But
Mhm.
Hayden Christensen was doing a little bit of Matt Lanter. He wasn't
Sure
full
was.
Hayden,
He
right?
sure was. Yes,
And
he was, Andrew.
I was like, oh my God, like everything's different now. That history is going to be divided between before this and after this.
It's that moment, right? It's that moment of, wow, the possibilities, right?
Yes.
The possibilities of having Hayden. Love Matt Lantern. I think he is still one of the greats. And he did such a good job with that character during in the animation of Clone Wars. I don't want to take anything away from that because he did such a good job because he really, again, until we got Clone Wars, we had Hayden in 2 movies. That was it. That was all our Anakin Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
He took Anakin and really propelled him. You and you can't take away, you cannot take that away from him.
No.
But when you bring in Hayden and you bring in him to look and be that character younger, to sound younger and to sound like Matt Lantern, I, like you're saying, Andrew, the possibilities where they can do more of this, forcey, world between worlds, flashback stuff. Give it to me. Give it to me
Yes.
because, and I think what really propelled that for me as well, and I'd love to hear what you think about this too, is that the way they had him look, again, you can tell a little bit of the de-aging, but that looked like that was 100% better than what we have seen previously. And that I couldn't, for me anyway, that look, having him look a little younger did not like, oh, I can tell. No, it looked good. It
Yeah.
looked really, really good. The only moment where I was like, yeeks, was right before that episode, is the end of episode 4, is when we first see him. He looked a little shiny, a little bit, but I again, it was one of those, I forgive it because it's Hayden. I don't care. But then you go to the next episode when you see him in the full shorter hair. It looked
Yes.
so good. And they did such a good job of having him look younger, but not taking away Hayden, though, right? Like having it still be Hayden, but you can tell, yeah, they de-aged, but they de-aged very well. I don't know if that's how you took it too, but man, they did a really good job for me when they pulled that off.
I did. I'm very uh, blind when it comes to effects. Like I could watch 10 movies and people would say all 10 of those movies have horrible special effects, and I could be like, I'll take your word for it. Like I
Same.
don't, yeah, I don't have that part of my brain that says that's a bad effect. But I do recognize when some effects are better than others, and it definitely was better in the Clone Wars flashback than it was in like the Obi-Wan show, for example.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
maybe that was just me getting caught up in the moment because I was so in love with what I was watching. But yeah, he did look better and sounding like Matt. Like, see, now that tells me like if when, because I mean it's only a matter of time, when we see Rex in live action,
Whew.
are we going to get Tamora Morrison doing a little bit of D. Bradley Baker? Because
Ooh.
why not? Right?
Why not? Why not? I mean, I know we got that real quick shot of him in the helmet. You don't see T's face, but you hear his voice. So I would be interested to see what they do with that, if that's a route they go with him, because again, that iconic voice that D does for Rex, it's so like it's just so good, right? And again, that's not to take away from Timur Morrison, right? He has a very distinctual voice for Boba Fett, right? He is Boba Fett. He is these clones because he was Django. So it's one of those like, okay, if they kind of go that way, I'm okay with it. But if they just do what they did and it just be Tamora Morrison and there's not a D Bradley, again, sad I would be because I love Dee's voice for Rex, but you would kind of understand it in that respect a little bit, whereas because it's Tamora Morrison and he is Jango Fett, he is Boba Fett. So the voice, again, you can maybe forgive, but I'm with you though. I'd be interested. I'd be interested if Tamora would want and do that, right? It'd be interesting. I think it'd be very interesting. And that brings up a lot of possibilities, right? More Clone Wars flashbacks. I mean, let's more Ahsoka, Rex, and Anakin and Obi-Wan, right? I mean, throw Ewan in there, make him look younger. I don't care. Give me the whole gang. Like,
And maybe one day, if the gods smile on us, throw Padme in there too.
Ooh.
Right?
Let me tell you, if we could ever get Natalie Portman back, I would be a very happy person. And I would hope she would want to do it, but again, if she didn't, I'd kind of understand because of again, being Star Wars fans and them hating the prequels.
Yeah.
But again, I think the positives that she could maybe look at again in that scenario is that look how much Hayden Christensen has been beloved recently. And again, it's not just it's a commute. It's Star Wars fans, man. We all love Hayden. We all want him to continue to play Anakin freaking Skywalker because he did such a good job. And I know Natalie again would do a good job if given another opportunity with Padme for sure. I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Bring the whole gang back together. That'd be amazing. That'd be amazing.
I think I would weep.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, we would. Oh, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with it. Not a dry eye. Not a dry eye.
No. And then on top of all these characters, we got in the span of a few years now, we have gotten 2 villains who are blue da budi da buda. We got Cad Bane, we got Grand Admiral Thrawn. How did it feel seeing them make that jump for you?
Ooh, Cad Bane. I'll start there because obviously he was our first blue boy that to make the jump. That to have it, I think it Clancy that does his voice, Clancy Brown.
No, it is. I think it's the same guy who did Obi-Wan's voice.
Okay, I can't remember, but it's the same guy that
Corey.
I don't want to say Booker, but right. But for him, for that voice actor to come back and do it, and again because they made his voice so distinctual, like they did Thrawn. Well, I'll come back full circle, but because they made that voice so distinctual, and for him to do it, oh my god, I was so happy, and he looked good. Like again, for an alien, for what they could do, in whatever prosthetics they had for the guy that was like in the suit and not do it was good. I loved it. I mean, he looked good. The movements and the swagger was just like the character that I remember in Clone Wars. But again, I think for me, it's the voice. It's the voice for the villain. So again, having Corey do the voice again was big. And for him again to be in that desert and to be like the lone gunman and all that stuff, it was so good. And then to have it again, Boba Fett versus Cad Bane. Again, Clone Wars fans, kids, we know that history. We know how deep that goes. It was great. I mean, again, more of him. I hope we see. I think we could, maybe, fingers crossed, we could see him in, in stuff, in future stuff that, has, stories before all that. It'd be great. And then you see our next blue boy, Thrawn. I mean, again, it couldn't be anybody but Lars. It had to be. It's the voice. I go again. Him voicing Thrawn in Rebels was so good, right? Because it's just such a distinctual voice again.
Yeah.
And it's just so villainous in a very simplistic way almost, and just how he draws some words or how he speaks. You have to paint Lars blue, and you have to have him play Thrawn. There was nobody else that could do it. I'm sorry. I would, and not to say that it can't be, right? Again, not to say that an actor can't be up to the challenge, but it's almost like I think Dave, and I think maybe just Lucasfilm overall knew, okay, the guy's good. He's a good actor regardless, right? Even without just being a voice actor. Lars is a good actor. So to, have him be that character and to portray Thrawn in live action the way he did. I mean, again, talk about a coming out party in live action. His, intro was amazing. I mean, again, stellar moment for me too. So yeah, it's again fun to see our heroes. Even I think as fun to see some of our favorite villains like Cad Bane, like Thrawn, make that jump because again, how important they are in the story, right? I mean, again, you have Boba Fett, and if you know Clone Wars, Cad Bane's a big part of that. So yeah, having him in that show was a really good choice, a smart move. And then again, we know how Thrawn is in Rebels, and we know the connection between him and Ezra, and we know that was a big part of the Ahsoka series. So having him show up, and not to just to be in one episode, but to be in like what I think was the last 3 that he was in, that was big. Because again, I as a fan of Thrawn want people who don't know him to really grasp how different of a villain he is and how important he is and how dangerous he is. And I think they did a good job. They sprinkled. I'm excited to see what they do with him moving forward. Again, with everything that happened in the Ahsoka series, there's a lot that can happen. And I think they're setting him up to be somebody important in, again, just my opinion. And I'd love to give your thoughts too, Andrew. I think he'll be the guy in Filoni's movie that kind of connects the whole Mando verse. Would make sense. I think that's the route they go. But being able to use Lars now as Thrawn is great. And to be able to use him in, again, you can maybe throw him in Mando season 4. You can throw him into these other shows because now we know who he is. Now he has entered the chat, as as cool kids say, or as the youngsters say. So yeah, I loved it. I mean, I'd love to hear what you think. I mean, it's a big moment for villains, right? Not even for our heroes, but to get villains in live action, it's pretty big.
Oh,
I think it's pretty
totally.
big.
Especially when they look so inhuman and distinct.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, getting Lars was the best choice. I've never seen him in live action, so I had no idea how much he looks like Thrawn anyway. Like he just has the same silhouette, and like they didn't have to do much except grab some paint, right? So that I loved how easily that transition. It's just it's a blue man in a white suit, and done wrong, it could look kind of dorky, but I think they did it as beautifully as they could. And when it comes to a cartoon character, the voices are so iconic that if you didn't get Lars back, whoever stepped into that role ran the risk of either not doing the voice justice or trying too hard and just coming across as a poor imitation, right? So you could really, that could have easily been messed up.
Yeah.
And I think that now with the Thrawn of it all, yeah, it's exciting to me because even though I've loved like pretty much all the stuff that Disney Star Wars has brought out, this is the first time that it really feels in a kind of Marvel, but not sort of Marvel way, that stuff is pointing to something. That everything is a signpost saying like, we are building towards a cool thing. So here's other cool things that get you there.
Yeah.
And that to me is exciting because I love that type of storytelling. And I've always wanted Star Wars to embrace that. And it's slowly but surely creeping in. With Cad Bane, he was my favorite Clone Wars character. Ahsoka was right under him, but he was my favorite. I love Cad Bane. I love the way he looks. My only qualm with live action Cad Bane was they had this weird thing in the cartoons where every time you see him, his hat gradually gets smaller and smaller. And in live action, he had the smallest hat imaginable. And I'm just like, I miss your big hat, man. What's going on? I want him to not be able to get through doorways. That's how big that hat should be. So I wish he had died with the stellar hat on, but other than that, he looked perfect. He sounded perfect. He was adequately scary. Like when you see him from afar, right? Yeah. He cuts a distinct silhouette on that desert.
Yeah.
And I think they did him justice. And even though that was his time to go, what a way to go.
It was, right? I mean, it was a great way for that character. But again, I think if they want to pull him out, they can. If they got another story like prior to that, Boba Fett, stuff happening, they got the prosthetic. They have, they got the voice guy. And the one thing I really hoped to have seen is him flying with his boots. Again, I'm hoping, cross fingers, maybe in another project that we can get him in. We can see him flying around on it. But yeah, no, I agree. I think the hat of it all. It was a choice. But again, you kind of understand it to a certain degree, right? Because again, not everything can translate. Like we've kind of talked about earlier, it can't always translate from animation to live action, right? Like you're saying, like the Grand Inquisitor. You're not going to make that dude's head that big. You're just not. Like, it's just not going to work that way. So you got to make some sacrifices. But yeah, I think overall with both of them, I agree with you, Andrew. I think they did a really good job bringing those two to live action. And to be menacing, though, right? That was the key.
Yes.
To make them menacing because they are villains in the end.
Yes, and that could have so easily gone wrong and looked laughable, but never. You're scared of them every time they're on screen, which is exactly what you want.
Yep.
So I think what we're going to do is we're going to finish this video off with two big questions, Lauren. Right. And they are big ones. So I'll pose them to you one at a time. And if you have an answer right off the bat, go for it. If you need a second to think, I'll answer first, whatever you want. These are big ones.
Okay. I'm ready for you, Andrew.
First one is you get to go into the room at Skywalker Ranch or whatever, and you get to pick one animated character or creature or planet or whatever or element and bring it into live action. What are you picking?
Animation to live action. Real quick off the top, I would do something with the Bad Batch. Can be easily done. It's, again, you got the Clone Trooper stuff. You can easily do that. Maybe it'd be harder to find the actors because, again, they're supposed to be clones of Jango, but you could maybe argue that because they are, defective, they don't exactly look like Tamara Morrison. But I think, that those characters and that story, for me, I've loved Bad Batch the first 2 seasons. I'm excited for season 3. I'm excited to see what they do with those characters. I think it would be cool to see them in live action. I really do. Even if it's just one of those, they have their helmets on and maybe you let Dee Bradley just voice them through the helmets, for a quick, but I would love a live action story with those guys. Because I think it'd be, again, the storytelling would be great. They're very interesting and fascinating characters. You could tell a lot of different stories with them, and you can really even dive deeper into the whole clones of it all, right? Post Order 66, what happened, and you can follow that like we are with the show, but follow it more in live action with those characters. I think that would be, for me, that's definitely an option I think they could do. And I think it would, again, be one of those seamless things that I think could work for me.
Right. And you know what, Lauren? That's exactly my answer to this question, too. I'm going with the Bad Batch. And I would love I want them to go full Eddie Murphy, Nutty Professor. Like, get Tamara
Love it.
Morrison in there.
Love it.
Stick him in prosthetics if you have to, but film him 5 times and just have
I'll
fun
take
with
it.
that. Oh my God! You know,
And he would be up to it, don't you think?
Totally. He would have a ton of fun doing that, especially because he, just based off, you know, the things I've seen him in, he is an actor who gets typecast. He gets typecast as an intimidating, gruff guy. And all the other non-Star Wars things I've seen him in, which aren't many, like I can think off the top of my head, Aquaman and Barbarella. Like those are the only 2 I can
Pretty
think of.
much it is all I know too.
Yeah. And it's the same thing. Like, he is a tough, gruff guy who's like, ooh, that guy's intimidating. I don't want to mess with him. And as an actor, I can only imagine Morrison would be thrilled at the prospect of being like, okay, when you're Hunter, yeah, that's kind of who you got to be. But when you start to play Tech, you're going to have a lot of fun with that. When you play Wrecker and he's like just this big, dumb, lovable oaf, you're going to have fun with that because you've never gotten to play those kind of people. So I know if I got cast in some kind of role like that, I would be eaten. I would be having the time of my life with that kind of thing. And then, I would, that would be so much fun. And then seeing Omega as well. Obviously, don't get Tamara Morrison to play her. That would be a little odd, but I'm sure there's somebody out there that they can find who can come on and be this little blonde kid with her bow and just kick ass alongside the Bad Batch. I think that'd be so much fun.
I agree. I'm with you, man. I'm with you on that one for sure. Bad Batch all the way.
One day it'll happen. Mandalorian season 4.
I love it.
And now the second of these big questions is the opposite of this, Lauren. You get to take an aspect of Star Wars, characters, planets, whatever things, and take it and put it from live action into an animated format. How are you playing with that, and what are you choosing?
I would go. This might be an interesting choice. I would go maybe sequel trilogy. I think I would do, again, have Daisy voice some Rey stuff, give us some context of what she was doing post Rise of Skywalker, throw in John Boyega in there. Obviously, oh God, who played Poe?
Oscar Isaac.
Thank you, Oscar. He already voiced Poe in Resistance.
That's right.
You know, so again, in that type of medium, you can tell some really good stories, right? You can kind of go in some kind of weird, which I love sometimes when Star Wars goes weird. You can go into those kind of weird scenarios where she and Finn are on a planet, and like in Bad Batch, there's some almost Godzilla like monster. Like, you can do those fun things and keep it in animation, but keep the lore and kind of keep the story going until till her movie comes out in 2020, whatever, right?
Yeah.
I think that would be for me, and I think it would mean a lot to the fans of the sequel trilogy, because again, as some people might not want to recognize, there are a lot of fans of the sequel trilogy, just like there were a lot of fans of the prequels, right? And look what has happened since then. All the people that have loved the prequels, myself included, are being fed all that stuff. Hayden, Ewan, all that like prequel era is getting a lot of love. Let's start there with the sequel trilogy. Start it in animation and then grow it into maybe live action. But I think those are the characters, I think those are the ones that could really do a good job of in animation, tell some fun stories, follow these characters on their adventures. And I think it would be a success, especially if you can get the Daisies, the Johns, and the Oscars to voice it. I think that would be my personal choice.
I love that. And that's a great point, Lauren, to make, where you take the concept of we are going to bring back the sequels and make all of its fans happy, and you start it with the animation and work your way. That's an awesome way to look at it. It's very sort of on brand with how Lucasfilm works, to get you pumped more and more with each passing thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that. And as a guy who really, really had a lot of fun with the sequels too, I'm on board to see all those characters again. My answer to this question is going to be maybe a little bit greedy, but it's something that I think, like, I can't think of a single Star Wars fan who would say, no, I don't want this. Which is, I believe that the Clone Wars did such a good job of filling in that blank between episodes 2 and 3. The very nature of how Star Wars stuff comes out in such a chronologically wacko way, it leaves a lot of blanks, particularly where the movies are concerned. There's a lot of blanks in between them. And I love when storytellers, particularly like Filoni's crew, fills in those blanks, and they make it so good that it makes the movies that touch those blanks even better by comparison. So, or rather, even better by association, not comparison. So, what I would like in my greedy world that I know everybody would get on board with here is, if I was running the show there, I would say we are going to have 3 animated series running concurrently, and each one takes place within, like, one of them is in the prequel era, one is in the original era, one of them is in the sequel era. Because those are 3 totally different flavors of Star Wars.
I like that.
And particularly, I think right after Jedi is a good place to put a cartoon. I mean, it's the best way to continue Han and Leia and Luke's adventures right now. Like, it is the best way. As much as we would love recasting or whatever, or de-aging, whatever, like, there's pros and cons, but this is the best way to do it. And the prequel era makes me so happy, Lauren. Like, I can't describe. There's just something about the Star Wars galaxy in the era of the prequels that, like, if there's a heaven, it's just me getting to walk around on my Coruscant. Yay! So a cartoon set in the huge 10-year gap between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, I would eat that up like the cereal guy in Andor. I
like that. I like that a lot. There's a lot of stories to tell. I agree with that. Ooh, that's a good one.
So,
that's a good one.
And then something in the sequel era that ties all that stuff together in a nice bow too, like you said. I'm all for it. But imagine those 3 shows running, and, like, you know, in February they start, you know, the prequel era show, and then in October you get the original era show, and then the next February you get the sequel era show, and then they kind of alternate like that. Oh my God, I would have so much fun with that.
That is one of those, you get everybody on board, like you said, Andrew, and you hit everybody's prequel love, OG love, sequel trilogy love. Right.
Yeah.
And if you can do it concurrently, I'm with you, especially in animation. And especially I'm with you when it comes to the prequels between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. There is so much that they could tell with Obi-Wan, with a very, very young Anakin, with Yoda, with Master Windu, with what was going on that got us to that point. Right. I would love that show. The one that I think would be very intriguing, and I have thought about that too, and I'm so glad you brought it up, is the one with the original trilogy, post Return of the Jedi. It's the smart thing to do with where we are, right? Because of, you know, the age, again, time is time.
Yeah.
Mark's getting older, you know, obviously Harrison Ford's older. You can't tell that story in live action. You just can't. As much as we would love it, and the de-aging, there's a limit for me to where, okay, we've gone too far.
Yeah.
Animation is the perfect medium